The early inhabitants of island Southeast Asia were a population that were self-sufficient explorers of their environment. By hunting, fishing, and gathering fruits, vegetables, and root crops from their forests, they lived a nomadic life, mostly existing off the land and sea. Good food begins and ends with its ingredients. Our early inhabitants were adept at sourcing out and employing the abundance of local ingredients in their cooking.
One of the most interesting observations about life in island Southeast Asia is the fact that the region is also an area of botanical interest. And these are edibles that have characterized our diets, you might say.
Because our early inhabitants ate to survive, they favored ingredients that were abundant and filling, such as root crops.
Food resources from plants might have included root crops that may have been dug along the forest floor and along grasslands, and even edible leaves and fruits.
Taro is said to be one of the most popular foods of the early Filipinos. It was even said to be more popular than rice because rice was quite difficult to plant and to cultivate.
It was very simple to prepare a root crop to eat. They were generally boiled or roasted.
The taro root when cooked has a starchy and neutral flavor. The leaves as well can be cooked. Taro, which is locally known as gabi, was highly favored because it makes one full even if the meal is meager, expanding while it is digested.
For everyday food, one could stand the typhoons. They invested more in gabi.
As their numbers grew, our early inhabitants began to develop a system to cultivate food to secure a steadier supply.
The cultural phase known as the Neolithic is a food revolution. Around the world, everything is happening regarding a change into a more efficient supply of food. And these are the transition from root crops into grain crops.
Rice is another popular ingredient. In the Philippines, we have so many varieties that allow us to create all sorts of recipes with them.
The Austronesians already knew the cultivation of rice because they brought in two types.
This culture have been the baggage of these people, and they have brought it along into the northern parts of the Philippines.
And so the rice terraces were constructed precisely to enable the Ifugaos to cultivate rice in the higher altitudes because remember, this is rice planted on the sides of mountains.
As rice grew in popularity, our early inhabitants found different ways to cultivate it in a variety of environments.
They have to adapt because they cannot plant rice or grain crops everywhere. So they have developed certain varieties of rice that could fit into watery situations or paddy fields and also upland situation.
So they cultivated a type of rice that could be planted during the cold season, around December, January, and cultivate and harvested during the warm season.
The Filipinos' affinity to rice is seen in our vocabulary. Vernacular terms for eating like kain or kaon is closely associated with the words for cooked rice like kanin or kanon. The rice of our forefathers had more character because this was basically hand-milled and had a more nutty flavor than what we are used to today.
The simplest diet is just rice. We get our carbohydrate, we get our energy from the rice. So you needed to have a container and you had to put the water in it. So before we had pots, we were cooking our rice in bamboo tubes.
Our love of rice is shared with the rest of Southeast Asia, and rice it serves as a blank canvas in which we mix-match all the other dishes with it.
But we would like to add a little bit of flavor to it. The Spanish noticed that. They said, they would pluck a leaf, they would tear it, and then they would let the juice of the leaf fall on the rice, and they were very happy with that. Or they would take a little bit of salt or a little bit of fish paste, and they would put it on the rice and they would eat it. That was the meal.
Rice was always prestigious. It was really the food for prestigious families. It is also the food for fiestas, but not for everyday tables.
Another ingredient that figures heavily in our cuisine is found growing all over island Southeast Asia. The coconut provided so many degrees of complexity in Philippine cookery because at all stages of the coconut, it gives you a different flavor profile and texture. The coconut tree was truly the tree of life. With a single tree, you could come up with a lot of different materials to cook with. The flower alone could be trimmed to collect its sap. The sap can be drunk as a beverage. It can be used to ferment to make vinegar. It can be distilled to make wine. And it can also be used as a cooking liquid. The fruit, the young fruit, has a very tender texture and a very sweet juice. As it matures, it becomes more complex in flavor. The husk, when it's dried, is also used for smoking. The leaves can be collected and made to wrap rice cakes and other food. Mature coconut meat can also be grated into a pulp called kinayod na niyog, which is squeezed until coconut cream or gata is extracted. The trunk can be cut and collect the heart of palm to make some sort of salad, and the roots can be used as firewood. So the entire tree has a lot of culinary applications. The natural environment from which our early inhabitants sourced their ingredients dictated the bold, fresh flavors found in their food.
There are many mysteries yet that we need to unravel in Philippine history. But in going back to tastes, so we had that as salty, and then we already recognized the bagoong and the patis. We have that very, very early on. When we go to sweet, we got our sweetness from the fruits, from the juice of the sugar cane before we started to make sugar. Bitter, we had bitter substances, and to us, salt water was bitter. Certain types of local wine, whether made of palm or made of sugarcane or of rice. But what is very unusual is that we have an extremely long list of souring agents. The souring agents vary from a leaf to a juice to vinegar that is a natural fermentation.
Creativity and a deep understanding of the landscape allowed our early inhabitants to feed themselves with food that was both delicious and satisfying.